Good afternoon, everybody. If you'll allow me, I'll stand up during the presentation.
Hello.
That somehow makes me
Flavia.
feel comfortable with this topic. Very welcome to our speakers on the panel. Mr. Alexander Börsch, the Director of Research and Chief Economist of Deloitte, Germany. Flavia Kleiner from Libero in Switzerland, Executive Director and Co-President. Then Willy Rennie, from the leader of the Scottish Liberal Democrats, and Trine Skei Grande, leader of Venstre Norway. We're supposed to have on the podium.
Yeah, I'm a replacement.
You're the replacement. Okay, I was not briefed on that, but very welcome. But maybe you can introduce yourself then.
I will. Trine is stuck in budget negotiations in Oslo, so my name is Sveinung Rotevatn, and I'm a member of parliament for Venstre Norway.
Okay, very welcome to you too. I apologize about that, but as I said, we're liberals, we're very flexible even without a briefing. Today we're going to talk about the politics of fear and Brexit. I would actually like to change the title a little bit, if I look at the backdrop of this ALDE conference, and change the title to Who's Afraid of Yellow and Blue? Well, we certainly are not. We're going to hear in a minute our four experts give their views a little bit on the politics of fear and the role they played in the Brexit referendum. And I think that parallels can also be made with the US elections, with Austrian elections and elections in other countries. But in my introduction, I would just briefly like to tilt this perspective a little bit, because we are talking a lot about populism and populists and how they play on the fears of people. And quite honestly, I think that we will very quickly agree how they use people's fears. But maybe we should also take a look at ourselves and ask ourselves, are we maybe too afraid? Are we maybe too afraid to speak up for what we believe in? Are we maybe afraid of the populists? Are we afraid to defend our values against their intimidation? Because sometimes it feels a little bit to me as if we are, for example, like children in the schoolyard. And you know the typical school bully? Everybody is afraid of them. Now, there are two things you can do. You can try and sort of, cozy up to the bully. You don't like the bully, and you yourself will not be a bully. But if you stay close to the bully, then you're probably going to be safe. You want to be in his league. But sometimes there's this little kid, a real skinny, small kid who has the courage to challenge the bully. And then it turns out that very often the bullies aren't that strong, and they aren't that courageous. And sometimes the little kid wins. But you have to have the courage. Let's not be intimidated. Let's not be bullied. Because if you look at the populists who are out to destroy, and I use that word very consciously, to destroy everything that's precious to us. And not only because we're liberals, but because that is the world we're living in. We want all to live in a free world. I'm pretty petrified myself, to use another term for fear. If I meet NGOs here today in Poland and I hear that they are afraid to speak out, they're afraid to do their work, they're afraid to challenge the government, they're afraid because they actually fear of being imprisoned, they're afraid of sanctions, they're afraid of the government. And that scares me. And it scares me even more if I see that we are afraid to challenge those politics. Because it's those governments who are destroying the free world that we want to live in. So I think it's about time that we find the courage ourselves to stand up for what we believe in, without buts and ifs, but really stand up for what we believe in. And we believe in a strong and free Europe. And I think we should be willing to fight for it if necessary, to be courageous and not be afraid, not be bullied. And I'll conclude on the last example to also illustrate a little bit on how far that can go. I addressed a meeting last week of Directors General of the European Commission. And we talked about the need to defend democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights in Europe. And this was a closed meeting. And they all said to me, they said, you know, privately, I fully agree with you. You know, democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights are under threat. And we need to do something. And we really feel that the European Union should intervene, should stand up and defend democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights. But that's our private opinion. But you see, as officials of the European Commission, we feel that we should be quiet. Because, you know, the European Union is not loved. People don't like us. And we've been beaten so much by the national governments, by national populists, telling us that the European Commission is interfering too much with member states' policies, that the European Commission should only focus on cutting red tape. So we think it's better if we're timid, if we're modest, and we just turn a blind eye. And that reminded me of what they call the battered wife syndrome. You know, women who are suffering from domestic violence, they don't fight back, but with every blow they get, they make themselves smaller and smaller and smaller. And more a victim. We should speak up. We should not be a victim, we should not be bullied, we should not be intimidated. And I think we can fight back. Because the populists, in the end, still do not have a majority. They may win elections, they may win a referendum occasionally, but they do not have the majority. We have the majority. But a silent majority, and we're going to hear more about that, in particular from Flavia in a minute. So let's believe in ourselves, let's believe in what we stand for, let's believe in that strong and free Europe, a Europe of values, because that is what we want to defend. And if we are not willing to defend it, how can we expect other people to do that? So, having said all that, I'm going to invite... Thank you very much. I'm going to invite our panelists, starting with Flavia. We go from left to right. I'm going to invite you to each speak for, say, 5 to 10 minutes. And after 4 introductions, we're going to open the floor for questions and debate. So I think you are all wired, so you can remain seated or stand up as you prefer. Flavia, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for this powerful and really passionate introduction into this panel. I think it's so important, and I straight feel that I must stand up now and speak standing, because I think it's just more powerful. And that's what I'm going to do. And what I want to do tonight is tell you a positive story. A story how we managed to actually fight the populists effectively in Switzerland and to win a right-wing referendum in Switzerland. And maybe first to give you a short image of what we want to do for Switzerland. We are called Operation Libero, a liberal movement, liberalize Switzerland. And we say Switzerland, it's the land of opportunities of the 21st century. And we say Switzerland is not a free air museum where everything should stand still, where nothing should change, because that's actually what the Swiss People's Party, the conservatives in Switzerland, want Switzerland to be. And that's what we are fighting. And let me start with this referendum by telling you a short story. In 2010, the SVP, so the Swiss People's Party, they launched an initiative for the expulsion or deportation of criminal foreigners. This one was accepted, and by this, Switzerland had the most restrictive law on foreigners in whole Europe. Then this law went to the parliament for the implementation. This is the normal process. So Swiss parliament must introduce this into our legal system, this initiative. And what did the parliament do? They said, well, we cannot just strictly implement this new initiative into our legal system because it's just not, it doesn't go together with international law. And what they did, they introduced a cause of personal hardship into this law. And they said it must still be possible for a judge to look at the person and to say whether this person, the interest of the country, to send out this person of our country, is bigger than the personal interest of the person to stay in the country. This must be seen by a judge. So actually, this is the clause of personal hardship, that if someone has a family in the country, when, for example, a foreigner was born in Switzerland, raised in Switzerland, doesn't have a link to the country where he's coming from, he must stay here. And this is what the parliament introduced into this new law. And the SVP was not happy with this. What they said is, actually, the parliament did not respect the true will of the Swiss people who elected for this law. And so what they did is they launched another initiative, and they said, we must set through the true will of the Swiss people. And they launched again a new initiative, which actually didn't just actually redo the same initiative, but added another catalogue of small delicts, like delicts like driving too fast 2 times. And for this, you could have been sent out of the country when this law would have been accepted. So I started with this quick introduction, just that you can understand what we're talking about. But now I want to come to what I must tell you about what we did. In February this year, there was the votation. And before that, in October, there was the big election in Switzerland. And actually, the SVP, so the Conservatives, they were the huge winners. They made like over 30%. And all the parties were so tired and sad after this election. And so what happened is that they actually didn't see any power or like develop any power to fight this referendum we were deciding on in February. And so this was the situation, actually. You had this David Goliath, or like the situation on the schoolyard, right? You were talking about, Sophie, that there are the skinny kids and there's the bully. And all the other skinny kids, they didn't want to do anything but just stand at the wall and let themselves being beat up again, right? So we said, actually, we must fight this referendum. We cannot do anything else. And still, the first survey said that for 66%, this referendum will be accepted. So a really, really bad situation at the beginning. But so I want to say what we did. The first thing was, we simply believed that we can win. This was a really simple but really important step, I think. We were believing that it's not a given that the SVP is going to win again. It's not a given that the SVP is going to win again. Well, we started to look actually at this law, and we were saying, okay, we must simply achieve to somehow break this hegemony of the SVP. This must be our aim. We must break this. And we actually were looking up again at how many people in similar questions voted with the SVP. And we realized that actually it's many voters in the middle, that it's too many voters in the middle that actually vote with the populists, with the conservatives. So we said we must focus actually on these conservative voters. And that's what we did by deciding that we're going to speak about the problems that this law is doing to our democracy, to our rule of law, and to our living together in this country. By speaking about Swiss values which are important to us in our country. And I think this was actually crucial, because that's where we started to reframe the whole issue. That's where we said, listen, SVP, we're not coming on the battlefield where you say that we must define, that we must actually, that we must fight for criminal foreigners, for them staying here. But we were saying, no, SVP, you're coming to our battlefield, and that's where you explain us why you are actually aggressing our democracy, our rule of law, and our living together in the country. And now speaking about some tactics, I think what was important at the very beginning, we saw that we have no money. And we saw that the situation was that in public, everyone expected the SVP to win. So we decided to go to the media and actually to speak to different journalists and explain them what we see as problematic about this initiative. And here I must say it's important to go to popular newspapers. And you must think in headlines. I think this is really important. You must think in headlines. And for example, the 20 Minuten, this is the journal in Switzerland that like a quarter of the whole Swiss population is reading every day. To get to the front of this newspaper, you must be able to say your message in 5 words and 1 picture. And that's how you must think. How do we get there? That's the decisive thing. And yeah, so what I want to say is you can be popular without being populistic. We also did a lot of fact-checking. This is really important as well for our campaign. And I think you must introduce again facts in the debate, and you can do it. That's what I want to say. And last but not least, and at this point maybe I want to finish, the most important is you must give people a story that goes beyond. It must be a powerful story of a vision for your future, a vision of the future where people feel at home, where people want to live in, an optimistic vision, a vision where also hope and this emotion of optimistic worldview, where this is actually just as a strong feeling as the emotion of fear. That's what I would say for a first statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your story pretty much went around the international media. I read about you in the Dutch newspapers, and people were kind of, you know, it gave them hope and optimism indeed. As you say, it's not a given that the others will win. I mean, we have rights to have confidence in our own message. And we spoke earlier today. I had the opportunity to listen to your story. And one of the things that struck me about that is that where seemingly the populists and the xenophobic forces would have an easier cause to defend, you actually chose something which in principle is very abstract, the rule of law. And we always tend to think, we liberals always say rule of law is extremely important, but we don't think that we can defend it for a wide public. And I think that you proved that fear wrong. Because you defended it and very adequately, and you had this slogan, something like, don't reduce our judges to machines, you know, rubber stamping machines basically, and that sort of drove the message home very well of how important the rule of law is. Very, very effective, and I think we can learn a lot from you. Then I'm going to give the floor to Alexander for about 10 minutes.
Okay, thanks a lot. I would like to approach the issue from a slightly different perspective, namely from an economics perspective. So what does politics of fear looks like from an economic standpoint? And I would like to think a little bit about, are there economic fundamentals that favor populist votes or that favor the votes that we've seen in 2016? And I think if we take the Brexit referendum as a starting point, there's a very clear pattern. I mean, if you look at the voters who voted for Brexit, most of them live in rural areas, and most of them have not a university education. And the question really is, why is that? I mean, what is going on here? Because what we also need to keep in mind is that the UK has been doing quite well in economic terms since the financial crisis, at least much better than the Eurozone. So there's obviously a puzzle why people are voting for a jump into the unknown instead of, well, holding on to what they have. So, and I guess there are two drivers, two trends that affect the labor market that favor these populist votes. I think what we need to acknowledge is that the labor market is changing tremendously. That is causing a big degree of uncertainty for certain groups in the society. And I think these changes have two main drivers. The first driver is certainly globalization. So globalization means for labor market that we have a labor pool that has been growing by around 1 billion people. And this, of course, has consequences for national labor markets. So don't get me wrong, globalization has huge positive effects in economic terms. However, we have to acknowledge that there is greater competition for production, that there's greater competition for jobs, and that some segments of society are more affected than others. So I think that's the first driver. Related to that, but maybe more important, is the emergence of digital technologies. I mean, understood in a very broad sense, from computers, laptops, to the smartphones in our pockets, up to trends like artificial intelligence or machine learning. But what it means is that the workplace is changing in a very big way, and some people are more prepared for that than others. And I think that the changes are really visible in two dimensions. The first is that the demand for skills is changing substantially. So if you look at the demand for labor, tech workers are having the time of their lives. So the demand for tech workers has been growing across all industrialized countries. And that means that existing jobs are getting more IT heavy. So you have to know what to do with a computer in almost any job. And you have completely new occupations, and especially the highly paid occupations. I mean, if you wanted to become an app developer 10 years ago, that would have been difficult because there were no apps. And the same is true for jobs like social media analysts, big data scientists, and many more. So that means there's a premium for technical skills. However, there's at the same time, there's pressure on people with a sort of medium education skill set. They have a high risk of automation, and if they don't have the risk of automation, it's clear that they need to acquire new skills. And that, of course, again, causes uncertainty, it causes fear, and maybe it causes even a sort of memories of the good old times. The second point where labor markets are changing is related, but what's very important is that the geography of occupations is changing, especially of the highly paying occupations. So if you look at what you can call innovation industries, digital industries, biotech, software, internet, you will find that they're all very concentrated in certain places. So we have the Silicon Valley, we have Tel Aviv. In Europe, we have London, we have Paris, we have Helsinki, Stockholm, Munich, Berlin. So certain industries are really clustered in certain cities. And that, of course, means that the talents are getting attracted to these cities. And you have some sort of Hollywood effect. If you want to be a software engineer, it's better to go to the Silicon Valley than to stay in the middle of Germany where there are no IT firms. And what it means is that there are huge gaps emerging in terms of talent. So you have big cities with a huge pool of talent, and you have rural areas where these talents don't go to. And there's a certain sort of decoupling going on. We recently did an analysis on Germany, on digital competitiveness, and it turned out that talent, innovation, and the attractiveness of cities is really much centered to the three biggest cities. Then you have 7, 8 cities which are doing okay, quite well, but the next 20 cities are already quite decoupled from innovation and from the digital industries. So, and that means if you're employed in a rural area, you again have the risk that you need new skills, that you have to move, or that you really have to live with lower wages or no wages. So, and that's, I think, the sort of economic context where the populist votes take place. And the question, of course, is what can we do about it? And to start with the wrong answer, I think the wrong answer is definitely to try to roll back globalization or to try to roll back technological progress. In my view, it wouldn't work anyway, that's the first point. But second, it would only multiply our problems. So we really have to find ways to manage the process and enable people to be able to compete in this new kind of economy. And I think if I just focus on one point here, what is absolutely crucial is education. We see that everybody needs digital skills, and I'm not sure that our education system gives everybody the chance to acquire these skills. And this plays out on two levels. First, on the sort of high skill level. I mean, Europe definitely needs big data scientists who are able to maybe establish the next Google in Europe. So that's really, really important for our competitiveness, but also to equip the broader workforce with at least basic digital skills so that they're still employable in this sort of new world of work. And if we're talking about education and lifelong learning, we tend to focus really, of course, on schools, on university, on kindergartens, but to a high degree, we neglect the real lifelong learning that needs to take place. So the question really is, do we have the right institutions to equip mid-career people with new skills? So have we the right institutions to reschool people from the banking industry with programming or coding skills? And actually, I don't see that. So there's certainly much to be done in this area. And we wanted to talk about visions. And I think my vision would be really to address this fear of uncertainty in the labor markets, is really to equip people with the skills that they need to take part in this new economy, and also are able to live, manage, and control the technology that is all around us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I think it's indeed quite interesting if you compare the, let's say, the electoral maps or the electoral results with the areas where people live and how they vote, and you see indeed a correspondence between areas where people they don't actually fear globalization, they are actually suffering from globalization, but that is nothing new, that's always existed. And if you look at the electorate, it's actually quite worrying to see that it's not just people who are indeed hit by economic, let's say, hardship, but they're more and more highly educated, quite well-off people who are also supporting these populist policies, and they are actually the ones, I think, who are afraid. I mean, if you lose your job, you can't say that you're afraid, because you actually do lose your job. It's the reality. But I think a lot of people are what you describe is actually part of an even bigger problem. I think is that the world order, in people's perception at least, has changed so dramatically. The world has changed beyond recognition, and that is partly the economy, that's globalization, that's the ICT revolution, but that's also diversity which is caused by migration, but also emancipation. I mean, some people are really, really worried about the world order when they see that, women can actually be leading, well, maybe not the United States quite yet, but the IMF or Germany. A Muslim can be the mayor of London, or a gay person can be prime minister of an EU member state. And there's some people who feel that there's something really, really wrong with the world, and they'd really, really like to go back to the time where, everything was still all right, Women were in the kitchen, gay people were in the closet, Eastern Europeans were behind the wall, Muslims were nowhere to be seen anyway, and everybody was in church on Sunday, and middle-aged white males were in control. And that's actually the program that these populists are proposing. Because it's not only about nationalism or about economic nationalism, it's also very much homophobic, misogynist. It's against everything that is changing. It's a kind of stop the world, I want to get off kind of fear. Okay, Willy, you're next. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. You've heard about the intellectual argument about the reasons why people are voting in the way that they are, the economic circumstances. I would add one more to that, and I think it is alluding to what you've just referenced, which is the pace of change. The fact that their communities are overflowing, they find it difficult to get into the GP, they find it difficult to get a place at school, and they don't see the necessary investment coming in to match that pace of change. And I think we need to recognise that as part of it too. I did 2 primary schools not so long ago. I was doing a talk about politics in general, and they weren't very interested, these 11-year-olds, until I said, do you know who Donald Trump is? And they all stuck up their hand straight away, immediately. I said, who is he? He said, candidate. What does he want to do? Build a wall? Where about? Mexican border? Who's going to pay for it? The Mexicans. Straight out. He knew immediately what Donald Trump's message was. And then I said, who's his opponent? And half of them put their hand up and spluttered out Hillary Clinton. And I said, what does she stand for? And there were no answers at all. They did not know what she stood for. Now, fast forward to a conference call that I had last week with the local party chairs in Scotland. And one long-standing member said to me, very good member from the southwest of the country, she said, Willie, I don't like all this stuff about campaigning in primary colours. She said, we consider things an awful lot more. We debate things. We don't see things in black and white terms. Said, but if you do not paint in primary colours and express your view very clearly, the Donald Trumps of the world win every single time. So there's an issue about how we communicate, and we do need to get out of our comfort zone of deliberating on every single thing and seeing both sides of the argument, and stand up very firmly for what our values are. That is a key part of how we defeat the populists. They should not have just the easy slogans on their side. We need to find ways, and we do it. I've seen it in election after election where we express in very simple terms. I want to just draw a little bit of a comparison between 3 different campaigns recently. One is the Brexit campaign, the Trump campaign, and a bit more controversially, the Scottish independence campaign. Because close observers of those 3 campaigns will see similarities in the messages between each of them, including take back control, make America great again, and who's best to make decisions about the country, the people who live here. They are all similar. In fact, I would say they're exactly the same messages, just phrased in slightly different ways. They appeal to people who have lost hope and believe in that something else that could happen, and believe in taking things back to ourselves and controlling it ourselves. They've got one other message, and I couldn't believe it when I heard Donald Trump say this. He says, it can't get any worse, can it? What have you got to lose? Don't test me on what my options are, on what my policies are, but what have you got to lose? And for most people who've lost their job, who are finding it difficult to get into the health service, to get their kid placed at school, they would say, maybe it can't get any worse. Maybe it is. This is a time for looking at something a bit more radical, whatever it is. I don't really know what it is, but maybe it is the time. But all 3 campaigns adopted that message. It can't get any worse. Now, the danger with that kind of campaign and that kind of message, it's all right for this is probably the upside of Donald Trump getting elected, at least he's only in for 4 years. If you get Scottish independence or you've got Brexit, it could be for life. It's irreversible. And that's what makes it doubly dangerous. However, I do have hope. And the hope was yesterday. The hope was yesterday in Richmond and our tremendous victory. Now, we won, and this is what gives me hope, is that we won on the basis not of doing some campaign on a tangent, but it was Brexit was the main message of this campaign. Now, sometimes, I'm sure we all do it, you run a campaign on one issue, and then you claim the result means something else, which has got a wider national significance. Well, in this case, it was central to the argument, and it gives me hope that people are looking for the change. They want to go back and reverse the decision that we made. But the other bit of hope is that we have been winning in the United Kingdom, local council by-elections in places that voted to leave, and voted to leave overwhelmingly. So those people too are looking perhaps to go back and reverse that decision. There are three solutions. One is about vision, and we ran a campaign in Scotland this year for the Scottish Parliament elections, which we lost our inhibitions. We decided just to say what we believed, even if some people got upset. It's quite a radical thought, this, but I've given up on getting 100% of the vote now. I know, call me a pessimist, but something less of that is okay. I would be quite happy with 20% or 25%. So let's stop worrying about the people that are going to disagree with us, and let's try and build a coalition of people who will agree with us on the biggest possible, boldest platform that we've got. So we talked about altruistic values, about looking after people next door, across the world, or in the future. Good liberal values. Not just looking to yourself, but looking to other people. We talked about helping people who need a bit of a helping hand. So we talked about childcare, making investment in the early years to make sure that those people who otherwise would be destined to a life of poverty and joblessness, we give them an opportunity to change their chances. We talked about mental health, which previously people in our country have been reluctant to talk about because of the stigma. But 1 in 4 of us in our lifetime will have experienced mental health problems. We talked about that. We weren't ashamed to talk about it. We talked about our own experiences of having mental health problems. And we talked about civil liberties. Again, something bizarrely our party, even though we're liberals, has been reluctant to talk about. We talked about civil liberties, about protecting the traditional values in our country. And we talked about the environment, about looking after our country in the future for future generations. All of those things we talked about, and we talked about with great confidence. And as a result, we got a better result. We started winning seats that we had lost last year. And we won big, really big in some areas. We're also winning by-elections in Scotland too. So we believe we've got the right kind of message. Confident, because sometimes we get worried about the detail of policy. I had people coming up to me during the election, and they would say to me, Willie, I like what you're saying, and I like the way that you're saying it. I would say to them afterwards, what did I say? They didn't have a clue. Not a clue. But what they believed and what they saw was somebody who was enthusiastic about his vision and talked about it in a positive, optimistic, outward-looking way. It's the general values and impressions that really count, and that's what Farage gets right. And that's what Trump gets right, and that's what we are sometimes a wee bit too timid to do. So talk about your values, what you believe in, even if it upsets some people. In fact, even if it's better if it upsets some people. There was one of my friends who was a campaigner in the West Country, said to me one time that he advised his councillors, his elected representatives, if he wasn't upsetting half of his voters, he wasn't doing his job properly. Now that's counterintuitive, because we want to try and build the biggest possible consensus. But I actually think what we need to do is have differentiation and clarity, so we're leading opinion rather than just following it and being timid and fearful of the populists. But the final belief, I think we need to rebuild trust. Now, we in the United Kingdom have had an approach to politics, which I'm sure many of you do as well in your country, is community politics. And it's really simple. incredibly simple. It's about listening to what people want, doing something about it, and reporting back. And it's about the potholes, and it's about sorting out the issues in people's communities. And it sounds basic. It's not big politics. It's not high rhetoric. It's not about that big vision. It's about reconnecting with people. And you won't believe it. People who've never voted in their life before will vote for me because I sorted the pothole outside the front of their house. And they tell other people that that politician does what he says, and he does something that's helping me individually, not helping him, about helping me. There was this man in Dunfermline who said, Mr. Rennie, you've changed my life. You've changed my life, he says, and I'm going to vote for you now. Let me buy you a drink, he said. And I said, what have I done? He says, well, the drain cover outside my house has been rattling for 3 years, and I've been complaining about it. You sorted it within a week of me telling you. That, for that man, that was as big as Brexit. That was as big as building the naval ships 2 miles down the road. That was as big as the big factory that's been built just round the corner. That was big for him because it mattered to him. And sometimes we perhaps are a little bit above those kind of issues, and we need to get back down to make sure that we're working with people. So those are the kind of things I think are partly the solution to the problem. It's multifaceted. It's about investing in people with nursery education, with mental health issues. It's about making sure we're giving people the opportunities to get work. That's the big strategic stuff. We also need to make sure that we've got the vision about the future, optimistic, outward-looking, open, positive, appealing to the best in people rather than the worst. And then the final thing is to rebuild trust with individuals by working at a community level on issues that they want sorted to make sure that they understand that we are relevant to them. It's not easy. It doesn't turn it around overnight. But I believe the Richmond by-election last night shows that it can work. Thank you very much.
Well, hope and trust. I think you've completely convinced me. I'll vote for you. I'll move to Scotland. I'll vote for you. No, but this is. I think this is how it should be done. And it reminded me of one more thing that we should also not forget when we go out and deliver leaflets, knock on doors, and all the rest of it. We shouldn't only convince people of our views or our trustworthiness. We should also mobilize them. Because there are already a lot of people out there who are convinced and who do trust us, but they don't go and vote. 30% of people abstained in the Brexit referendum. 45% in the US elections. Now, I think many of these people are probably already also convinced, but for some reason they have not been mobilized to go and vote. So it's not as if we need to come up with new arguments the whole time to convince new people. No, we can use our arguments, our vision, but also make sure that people feel the urgency and that they go and vote. But anyway, you have my vote. Okay, then the last speaker on our list, I hope I pronounce it correctly, Sveinung? Sveinung. Okay, you have the floor for about 10 minutes.
Thank you, Sophie. I think I'm going to stay seated because, this is a very comfortable chair. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you in cold and snowy Warsaw. As a Norwegian, I almost feel like home. My name is Sveinung. I'm a member of the Norwegian Parliament. What I didn't mention is that I'm actually also a member of the European Parliament. Not the European Parliament of the European Union, of course, but the Parliamentary Assembly of the other European Free Trade Organization, which is called EFTA, where I reside with our very important allies and partners, the Republic of Iceland and the Principality of Liechtenstein. And who knows, maybe we will be joined by the United Kingdom soon, which would, of course, be a very sad day for Norway, because we would immediately lose our status as an EFTA superpower. Now, being a Norwegian, I know all too well the populist movements that won the majority in the Brexit referendum, because they've also won not one, but 2 referenda in Norway on the matter of the European Union, which is why Norway never became a member of the European Union. Instead, we ended up with an association agreement, including us in pretty much everything that goes on in the European Union, but without a vote. This, for some reason, seems to keep the people of Norway very happy. They're still opposing EU membership with a wide margin, but nevertheless, they're very much in support of our association agreement, because that means we get to have our sacred independence, at least in theory. I think this actually carries some lessons to be learned from other countries as well. Not that anyone should try to copy our arrangement. It's a total democratic disaster, but it carries the lesson that feelings and identity matter, sometimes much more than the rational argument or even reality. And perhaps our British friends will end up with an agreement similar to ours, full access to the single market, abiding by all rules coming out of Brussels, without having a vote on the matter, and be perfectly happy about it, as long as you're independent, at least in theory. Now, the rise of populism and identity politics that, in my opinion, fueled both Brexit and the rise of Donald Trump is, of course, a matter of grave concern to every liberal. Now, it's tempting to meet this challenge with scare tactics, warning people not to vote for the unknown, not to vote for the dangerous option. And these forces are dangerous. It seems, however, that the lesson we must learn from the past 6 months of this annus horribilis is that people don't really scare that easily. Mr. Verhofstadt was perfectly right earlier today in saying that we are fighting a coalition of fear. But you don't fight a coalition of fear providing more fear. You fight them by providing hope. In my opinion, what is still lacking is liberals putting forward the positive case for cooperation across borders, the positive case for globalism, for the rule of law, for liberalism. I think that for far too long, we've taken the liberal order for granted, believing that once people experience and see the results, people will simply realize that we are right, because we are. But unfortunately, being right and winning are quite different things. And liberals need to win. In addition to stating a positive message and a positive case for the opportunities of globalism, I think we also need to be very concerned with offering solutions to what people see as the challenges of globalization. Because there is no doubt that globalization on a larger scale creates more wealth and more economic equality between nations. However, it seems also that there is a tendency in many countries that the benefits of open borders accumulate among certain segments of society, thus creating more domestic inequality, which fuels tension and fuels populism. It is my belief that we need to promote active policies to distribute the benefits of open borders and free markets among all the people, and not leave anyone behind. To take one example, there is a low-skilled group of people in the West who feel that globalization has left them behind. According to Eurostat, 20% of Europeans today have what is defined as low literacy and numerical skills. Providing accessible, high-quality education for everyone is key to providing equal opportunities in the global marketplace. And if for no other reason, keep this in mind. There is no single factor more predicative for whether you voted for Donald Trump than education, or rather the lack of education. And you saw the same thing with Brexit. You know, there's all this talk about the populist revolt of white people against minorities, or rural areas versus urban areas, young versus old. Be that as it may, but whether you live in a city or a small town, whether you're white or a person of color, whether you're young or old, the most important factor deciding whether you throw your lot in with the populists or not is whether you have good skills and a good education. Making sure that people have the right skills is also the most important thing we can do to get people back to work. Unemployment is poison to democracies and poison to the liberal order. If you don't have a job and a way to support your family, what do you care about the rule of law? What do you care about human rights, about climate change? The focus needs to be to get people back to work, rather than administering an increasingly larger unemployment benefit package. Now, luckily, technology, entrepreneurialism provides plenty of new opportunities within green tech, within small business, within the sharing economy. Now, liberals need to be pro-education, pro-business, and pro-labor market flexibility. In the end, though, what do policy plans really matter in the world of making America great again, or in the world of we want our country back? Policy plans will never be enough. I think Hillary Clinton has proved that quite thoroughly. We need to reconnect not only with the voters' minds, but also with the voters' hearts. President Teddy Roosevelt once said, "Fellow feeling, sympathy in the broadest sense, is the most important factor in producing a healthy political and social life. If you cannot relate our policies to the hearts of people, we will have a hard time convincing them otherwise." I believe that the hearts of Europeans reside not in fear and conflict, but in cooperation, in diversity, in opportunity, and in a Europe that treasures its history while moving forward into the future. So let's go tell them that. That's what we're for. We don't have to take our countries back. We already have our countries. What we need to do is take our continent back. And that should be the liberal message. Thank you.
Excellent, very good. Right to the core of things. I think somewhere at the start of your interventions, you said it's very clear. It's about identity politics. And I think that really goes to the heart of the matter. It's similar to what I called earlier the changing world order and the question of who are we and who's in charge, basically. And the funny thing is that in the European Union, and let's face it, we liberals sometimes also fall into that trap of thinking that what people are expressing is hatred of the European Union because the European Union has too much red tape. So when people say, I'm worried, what they are essentially saying, I'm worried about my identity, our response is, oh, very good, we're going to scrap a few directives about the curve of cucumbers. That is not what people are worried about. They may not like the particular directive, but that is not what they're worried about. So the response is the wrong one. And you said something else that triggers me a little bit, also because I've said something similar before. You said Hillary Clinton didn't convince. Actually, she did. She had the majority of votes. She convinced more people than Donald Trump did. And if you look at the other situations that we have been discussing, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, it is actually the electoral system that brings somebody to power, not the majority of the votes. The Polish government does not have the majority of the votes, but they have the majority of seats in parliament. They're two different things. Same goes for the Hungarian government. So let's not forget that. Let's also take hope and confidence from that. Yes, Hillary Clinton, and she didn't speak in one-liners and all the rest of it, but she convinced more people than Donald Trump did. He just won because of the electoral system. Okay, and of course we have to play within the electoral system, but we should believe in the power of our own message. Okay, having said all that, we have about, let's say, half an hour for questions and debate. Okay, I already see some hands going up. I have difficulty spotting you people there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take batches of 3 or 4 questions or remarks. I'm going to give you the floor, ask you to speak for about 1 minute, a minute and a half maximum. But before you say anything, please state your name and the party that you're from. Okay, I think the first request was over here. The gentleman in the second row, over here. You, yes, you. So I think there's a microphone over there. Is there a roving microphone anywhere? No? Well, I think if you just take that one and take the floor.
Thank you. Santiago de la Presilla, individual member. Thank you very much for the panel. It was very informative. I'll keep it short.
I think you need to keep the microphone.
It wasn't, there we go. It wasn't mentioned the fact of how much misinformation played a role in all of these campaigns. I know you, Sophie, you campaigned personally for the Ukraine referendum in the Netherlands. And Russian propaganda played a crucial role in that referendum. There was the example of a propaganda video that had supposedly right sector soldiers burning a Dutch flag saying that if you vote against us, we'll kill you. And then that video was spread all around Dutch social media. Then when it was proven that it was made by a bunch of Russians in a shed somewhere in Siberia, that didn't spread out as much as misinformation did. So I want to know, how can we tackle this? And also the fact that populists rally against the media all the time. They say that the media can't be trusted. This is something that Donald Trump does, Nigel Farage does. So how do we deal with that? And also with misinformation? Because I've seen that liberals...
the question is clear.
Yes.
Propaganda, misinformation, and assaults on the free media by the populists. Okay, second question over there. Maybe it's best if those who want to take the floor come up here, where the microphone is.
Jonathan Fryer, UK Liberal Democrats. Understandably, this session is called Brexit and the Politics of Fear, but the Brexiteers won the referendum because they dressed their campaign as the politics of hope, of false hope, based on false promises. £350 million a week for the National Health Service, decisions made in London rather than Brussels, and so on. So the challenge, to follow on from our Norwegian colleagues' point, is we have to seize and shape the agenda of hope.
Very good. The agenda of hope. Okay, I'd seen a third request for the floor, but that person seems to have changed his mind. Okay, if at this stage there are no further requests for the floor, I'm coming back to the panel, and after that back to you. So please already think about the question you want to put in the second round. Okay, who wants to respond first? Yes, Sveinung?
Thank you. No, I think you're quite right to point out that both the Brexit camp ran a campaign, at least in some part, based on hope, false hope, certainly. Which is also true, in fact, of Donald Trump. His whole message that everyone knows, as illustrated, is we're going to bring back the good old times. We're going to give you jobs. We're going to give you safety. So at least there are some things to learn from these people, which is to paint a vision of something that people want to achieve, a society they want to live in. Now, to the misinformation part, or well, we should call it what it is, the lies that dominate far too many elections these days. That is something that worries me deeply because I think a lot of this is, there's always been lying in politics, but what's happening is the fragmentation of our media landscape. We don't really have a common public sphere anymore. People get their information from echo chambers, from social media. Now, social media, of course, is a great provider of empowerment in many societies, but it can also make people retreat to their echo chambers and never be exposed to contrary information. Now, I wish I could provide a solution for this, but I can't. I think it's very difficult. I think we need to trust that our media organizations, our newspapers, can find sustainable models to make money and to keep playing vital parts as fact-checkers, editorialized media in the future. Because if we don't have a common public sphere, then having a civilized debate based on facts is very, very difficult.
Okay, Willy?
If we're explaining, then we're losing. So if we spend all our time trying to rebut every single lie or campaign point that they have put forward, then we're not seizing the message of hope. And it is about seizing the opportunity to talk about your vision and doing it relentlessly and not being distracted and not spending all of our time mopping up after them. Now, Scotland's gone through quite a traumatic period with the independence campaign. We had turnouts of, I think, 85%. Some areas it was 90%. People voted in this election who had never voted in their life before and will never vote again. In fact, this is it. This was their big chance. And they have been energized by the whole process. And online, there is quite a vicious campaign. And for people like me, it just exhausts you dealing with all these rebuttals of all these facts. So I just don't anymore. But there are now some who devote their life almost to providing the counter facts and challenging them on their own territory. And it must be exhausting for them to do so. I don't have the tolerance for it because it's like being in a parallel universe because they have just different norms. But they've dealt with it, and they've dealt with it very, very well, and at least keeps them in their box to some degree. It provides some kind of counter-argument so that people who are perhaps on the edge of believing all this stuff are at least got some counterfacts to be able to consider. Because the trouble with their campaign is that they are getting towards 50% of the vote. They were at 45%. And with the Brexit campaign, they were in a majority. But if you just leave them to their lies, then we don't get any further. But for the main speakers of the campaign, we should not be there. We should be up here. We should be talking about the big hope and vision and opportunity for big change. Some of the things that perhaps I was talking about earlier, if we get into dealing with all the lies in a minuscule kind of way, we will just get drowned out by their nonsense. It is about big picture. It is about vision. It's about colour. And all of those things, I think, will help to counter what the Farages and the Trumps of the world do.
Okay, thank you, Flavia.
Yes, I'd like to answer to your question mainly by explaining two innovations that we did during our campaign. The first was that like 1 month before the votation, the SVP, they sent out something that they call Extra Blatt. So it means like an extra newspaper. They send out into 2 million households in Switzerland, out of 8 million people living in this country, right? So first you must have the money, of course, but anyways, it was full of lies. It was like statistics showing like an Eritrean who raped a Swiss girl and he could stay here in the luxury prison, you know, like this style, okay? So what we did, this was on Saturday, it was in people's mailboxes. On Sunday, we wrote down the 5 biggest lies of this Extrablatt. And we sent it to all the journalists in the country so that on Monday morning, they straight had it on top of their mailbox, right? And the week after, the main issue in Swiss newspapers was fact-checking the SVP. So that's what we managed to do. Actually, all the Swiss newspapers were fact-checking the SVP. So from then on, they were doing the work for us, right? Which is amazing. And the second just example, we also invented the format of the so-called online warriors. Actually, what they do is they go on Facebook articles, comments, and the newspaper debate forums, you know, under the article. They're going there and fighting with the people. They're writing each other. What we do, we provide a Q&A for them, so that they know like this is the main arguments of the enemies and that's how you can actually counter them. We even provide memes, which like catchy argument, bam, you have it. You can actually only put you see this is the argument they bring, this is the meme you put, right? And that's one of the successful measures that we took, I think. Yeah.
Yes, no, about this issue of course, we have to look at the changing media landscape and how we find new ways of filtering out the lies, fact-checking, and I think this is extremely effective, what you've been doing, because we should also always counter it. But I think there's another dimension, and that is you have the dimension of those actually telling the lies and spreading the scare stories. But there is also the side of the person, let's say, doing the reception, the person listening. And what always strikes me is that many people actually know that some of or many of the scare stories going around are complete bullshit. They know it, but they trust the source, and they don't trust the other source telling the truth. And it also sometimes works the other way around. I find that funny. I also find that sometimes they trust, let's say, our side, the side of the reasonable people, even if what we say is also sometimes wrong. Sometimes I've heard, for example, in the latest campaign in the Netherlands, I've heard our side arguing for a yes vote, which in my view was the right thing to do, but with arguments that weren't quite right. But people who trusted us would believe it anyway. And I think that's something to keep in mind. Trust is actually the key. People will only listen to the facts if they trust you. And there I think we politicians also have a role to play, because it strikes me that very often when it comes to the European Union, national politicians actually do not do a whole lot to counter the lies. They don't really speak up for the European Union and do anything to dispel the lies. So I think we too should look at ourselves in a more critical manner and do more to dispel the lies and the myth and really tell the truth. Even if that means that national politicians, yes, will also have to speak out in defense of European integration. Okay, second round of questions. Hands. Rudi.
Rudi Rentschler from German FDP. One of my questions is, what can we do to enforce the freedom of the press? We see more and more how important it is, a free, if possible, of independent press, eventually also quite independent television. This is one of the minimal requirements. And we saw, for instance, in Italy, when Berlusconi took over the medias, or now in Eastern countries, what happens if some people are gaining the power on the media? Hence, free media is one so very important thing in democracy.
Okay, thank you,
How
Rudi.
can we strengthen this?
More questions on that side? No, everybody is completely enlightened. Yes, in the back.
Mariuszewski from Nowoczesna Warsaw. My impression is that we are not talking too much about the role of the internet and the creativity of this virtual world that exists around us. The hell is empty, but all the devils are on the internet and on the TV. The problem is that those people voting, they are living in this virtual world. My question is, how to make, again, the politicians to be real, to intervene and to meet the people. Our experience, crises are also the opportunities for Nowoczesna. Only now, in this disaster we are living now, our activists, the party members, are going on the streets, discussing with people on the projects, local projects. And for the first time, we missed this period of the civic education in Poland. We were taking for granted that liberal ideology will win forever. The history is ended, and we will live in the happy world. It is not like this. Only now we are rediscovering this dimension of direct contact with you, because And my impression is our fears, those fears, are irrational. And we politicians, we are trying, Clinton did, and some people in Britain are giving the rational answers, reactions to the irrational fears. When your child is feared of, the thing is you are just telling them, children, the fairy tales. It is the way of reacting. And it is also the way they are taking it now for the situation. How to make it real again, human again, close to our people. That's my question for you.
Okay, very good question. Where I think, incidentally, there are probably very different traditions across the member states and the member parties. I think the Lib Dems are always very good to really knock on doors, talk to people. I see another request for the floor here, and then we'll come back to the panel.
Karl-Heinz Paquet from the German FDP. It's more a comment, less of a question, but it may be argued about afterwards. I had the impression that there were two strands of arguments on the panel. The one was the economic explanation of of populism as a consequence of the losers of globalization, and the other one was the question of the emotional attachment of political argument, if you like. The one was put forward by Alexander in particular, and the other one by Willy. I think both are correct. They should not be played against each other. We can look with two different glasses at the election results. If we look at the British results, we can find, of course, a deep structure in the data, in the vote, which tells us that globalization matters. On the other hand, even in London, even in Cambridge and Oxford, and all these wonderful university cities with all these bright, globalized people, we have a remarkable high share of Brexiteers. So we liberals need to fight on both fronts. The one front is doing something for education, for bringing people back, to enable people to cope with the demands of globalization. And the second one is get away from our rational head-oriented campaigning to the emotions and to the passion that we apparently have lost if we compare it what others do.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Three clear questions. Who likes to respond first? Maybe Alexander, to the question about the economic dimension of the problem.
Well, I completely agree with you. I guess the economic story is part of the picture, but it's not the whole picture. So it's sort of maybe a foundation of what's happening, but of course you have trends like identity politics, you have trends like social media information or disinformation, which can really reinforce maybe these economic trends, but maybe then creates the critical mass that shifts maybe the majority in a referendum. So I really think we need both perspectives and see how they work together.
Yes. Svenung.
To the first point about freedom of the press. Now, I believe that if you take the case of Donald Trump, one of the points where I'm most afraid of what he's doing right now is his systematic undermining of people's confidence in the media and in the printed press. And this is not unique to Donald Trump. This is what you see with populists in every country, with their chants about the Lügenpresse and the elite liberal establishment in the media. Now, this is no coincidence. This is an important part about their success formula, and it's the most dangerous part, because if people stop believing what they read, what they see, what they hear, then we're really lost. So I believe, in countries like Poland and Hungary and, countries where we see populists, far-right politicians take power and start undermining the press, this is where we need to, the most stand our ground, never compromise, protest, stand up for free speech, because without free speech, you have nothing else. Second part about the globalization and identity politics, I think that, these two go hand in hand. I think it's no coincidence that the rise of the rise of populists right now comes after the greatest financial crash since the 1920s. It comes with the rise of unemployment. Now, when people feel anxious about their jobs, about the economic health of their countries, they turn inwards, they turn back to identity politics. Because, identity politics is sort of our, starting point. It's not very natural for people to work and live with, all kinds of different ethnicities and languages, etc. We started off in very small groups, in clan societies. So when people get anxious, when people get afraid, they go back to thinking that everyone who's different is a danger to me. An immigrant is dangerous to society, etc. So that is why I believe that leading sound economic policies, making sure everyone benefits from globalization, etc., is so key to tackling the element of identity politics, because they go hand in hand.
Okay, Flavia?
Thank you. Yes, I'd mainly like to answer to your question. I think it really must be a focus that we find more of a passionate, like a sensual language speaking even in politics. I mean, let me give you an example. To make things tangible, like don't speak about furniture, but speak about the chair. Just that you understand what I mean. Or for example, when Donald Trump was criticizing Obamacare in a debate with Hillary, Hillary should not have answered, well, but read the statistics, Donald, and look at this, Donald, and I mean, it's clear, Donald. She should have said, Donald, if my child is ill, I want to be able to call the doctor, and I want the doctor to come and to save my child. How about you? This should have been her answer. And I think this is really important. And I see our organization, for example, also as a service of translation, actually, from difficult political contexts, because the world is complex, to actually real, tangible language, but without actually being populistic, as others are, or without being under-complex, but actually to find a better language to make people understand what we are actually deciding about in democracies.
Thank you. I actually think that what you're doing, translating thoughts and ideas and replies into very easy sound bites, one-liners, things which are concrete that people can relate to. That is actually something that we should be doing at a European level as an ALDE family, and share that experience. And because what works in Switzerland may also work in another country. I mean, the views aren't that different. And I think we could help each other a lot more. So maybe we need an ALDE version of what you're doing. Okay, last opportunity for a question. No more burning issues. Then I'm going to ask the panelists if you want to make some closing remarks, if there's anything that has been left unsaid that you would like to add.
Just briefly?
Yes, Willie.
I suppose it's just a kind of a note of caution that we don't generalize about what Hillary would describe as the deplorables. Most of the people that I met who voted for leave or voted for independence, I didn't meet many Americans who voted for Trump, apart from the one man who came visiting Scotland, and they all seemed rational, reasonable, normal people. So we should not assume that they are lost to our cause. That's the first thing. We need to make sure that we're thinking carefully about exactly what they've got to say and how we can deal and address with those issues. My belief is that people didn't really believe that much of what Donald Trump was saying that was repugnant. They were just so desperate for change that they were prepared to put up with it. That is my belief. I don't think that my sister's boss, who lives in Colorado, who is a senior director for the bank, is really a misogynist or a racist. But he voted for Donald Trump because he wanted change. And there are lots of people who are like that. So let's not generalize and assume. Because if we do assume, we're writing them off. We're not listening to them. So let's just try and hear and listen and understand to what they've got to say. But coming back to the central point is, let's inspire them in the way that all these populists have inspired them in the wrong direction.
Hear, hear. I think that brings us to the conclusion of this session. And what I take away from it personally, and I hope you too, is that we're all very true to our reputation. Liberals are optimists. Yes. We don't write people off. We believe we can win. We don't take it for granted that the others win. And we have a message that we believe in and that we're willing to speak out for it. We are willing to go out there and as the gentleman of Nowoczesna said, to not just fight the battle on the internet, but actually go out and talk to people in the streets, but also people that we know. Because what we believe in is very precious to us and it's worth fighting for, and it's actually also fun fighting for, because I hope, Flavia, that you agree with me, but campaigning is actually a lot of fun. Absolutely. So I would like to thank the panelists, first of all, Flavia, Alexander, Willy, Sveinung, and I would like to thank you, fellow liberals, for being here and participating in the debate. And I hope that we now all go out and campaign when we go back home and campaign for what we believe in, because we can and we will win. Thank you very much.
Well done. Well done.